I think the word big data is now being used by many people in many different ways, and in fact, it has gone into the vocabulary, and it is used quite often in a non specific way. But in the course, what we're talking about when we talk about big data is a very specific definition. What we're talking about big data is the actual technical definition of big data, which means that you have data which is big enough so that it is not being able to processed in one machine. Now, historically, of course, we had computers which were able to connect together and were able to process very large quantities of data. But what has changed since about 2007, 2008 is that we have open source software like Hadoop, and we also have distributed architectures, which is the basic architecture of Hadoop to process large quantities of data using commodity hardware. Now, what that has led us to do is to create and ask answers to many complicated questions which previously were not able to return back in a certain amount of time. And in many ways, now we are seeing all these sophisticated problems being solved in a cheap way, and also applying all these complicated algorithms also in a cheap way. So I'm not saying big data is new. I'm saying actually big data was around for many, many years, but it was more expensive to apply that technology to common problems. But now what we have seen is technology has become cheaper, and people have also, on the other hand, learned algorithmic techniques to solve those problems, which is also a part of the course. What kind of problems we look at? So for example, air pollution, which is a huge problem in all parts of the world. And if you look at this sort of idea, which we are even looking at here in Spain, with the new programs at the campus in the smart city and so on and so forth, is how we can predict pollution in the future in a very close duration, in a matter of meters, and in the future. To predict a problem like that, you need data from many different sources, and you need to process this data in a very short time frame so that you can predict that 3 days down the line, in this intersection in Madrid city, the pollution will be good or bad. And this is really what we are talking about here. So we are talking about data which is very large, and which has to be processed in a very short time to give a result, which is to be used immediately. This was possible years ago, and has always been possible since the days of the mainframe and stuff like that, but it is more quicker and cheaper and easier to do it now. And this is the big difference with big data.